Hi, and welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Charles Lazzara, founder and president of Volio Imports. We're passionate about connecting our customers to the journey behind the bottle of wine. And today we're going to do just that. We're here to talk about Tenuta Argentiera from the coastal region of Tuscany called Bulgari. It is by far one of the most beautiful regions in all of Italy and the most exciting in terms of recent wine production. The DOC of Bulgaria was established in 1994, so a very young region on the map of Italy. The raw beauty of Argentiera is really hard to describe. But imagine if you're in Florence, you rent a car, you head out of the Renaissance culture into the countryside and head west about an hour. You'll run into this beautiful blue wall of water. This is where the Ligurian Sea meets the Tyrrhenian Sea, and you have no choice but to go south into Bulgaria. So you head south, you basically ascend from sea level up to about 900 feet in this beautiful driveway of perfectly manicured Mediterranean pines. And you see this amazing vineyard nestled into nature. You have natural wooded forests. And then if you can imagine yourself climbing up to the top of the hill and looking back behind you, you can see the island of Elba and then also Capri. It is one of the most beautiful and captivating places to go visit in all of Italy. The DOC of Bulgaria was established in 1994. Enough of the boring stuff. What you have to imagine is that in the early 70s, most of the area of Bulgaria was planted to Sangiovese, which is the natural choice of grapes to be planted in and around Tuscany. What happened was there was a really influential guy named Mario Inciso La Rocchetta that decided to plant some Cabernet Sauvignon for his own personal consumption at his winery, later to be called Sassicaia. These vines were planted in the early 40s and really didn't make it into commercial production until the late 60s with the 1968 vintage that made it out, really debuted in 1971. This really set the stage for what became a transformation from quantity to quality wine, as Sangiovese never had a great chance of making high quality wine in the area of Bulgaria. Basically, if you can imagine, Sangiovese doesn't like as much sunshine as it gets in coastal Tuscany, especially in Bulgaria. So what they did, this transformation took place of almost exclusively Sangiovese to now less than 2% of the planted varietals being Sangiovese in the DOC of Bulgaria. Again, the DOC was established in 1994, so it's a really young region. And now you have the majority, almost 43% of the varietals are planted in Cabernet Sauvignon, and then second to that being Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot. So you've seen this complete transformation from what would be indigenous Sangiovese varietals to now international varietals that really claim the fame for the Super Tuscan category in Italy. So Argentiera is one of the most southern producers in the DOC of Bulgaria. It is the youngest of the top five, and those top five producers are the following: Sassicaia, Ornellaia, Guadaltasso, Gaia with their Camarcando property, and Argentiera. The first leaf of Tenuta Argentiera was in 1997. The first bottling of the Bulgari Superior was in 2003. If you compare that to, as I mentioned earlier, Sassicaia being born in 1968, 1971 with the debut of that 1968 vintage, Ornellaia shortly thereafter, Guadaltasso, and Gaia that came over the next 15 to 20 years. Argentiera, born in the 90s, is really young. That is one of the reasons that we have some of the most competitive pricing that you will find for those high-end, very well-known names from the DOC of Bulgaria. Again, being the southernmost producer, we are the second highest in elevation, second only to the original plantings of Sassicaia. So we say 236 meters above sea level, which is essentially 900 feet. And we're the closest to the water. So what's important about Tenuta Argentiera, and why do we care about it in the grand landscape of Italian wines? I think you have to talk about the killer beast. You've got Barolo, Brunello, and Bulgari. Once we frame the argument that people that look to buy Italian wine think about the category as a brand and not the brands inside it, that's important. So Argentiera is part of Bulgari, which is, for lack of a better term, a super Tuscan. So who else is in that great hunt? You've got Sassicaia, Ornellaia, Guadaltasso, Argentiera, and the Gaia property. We want to be positioned next to them on the shelf. We don't want to talk about how one is better than the other. You will never hear Volio talk about our wines being better than another. It's always about complementing the category. The same is true for Argentiera. Our price points on average are 30 to 40% less than those other brands that I just mentioned. Why? We're the youngest of the top 5 producers. So it is unfair for Argentiera to assume that we are at the same price point, of the same caliber in terms of name recognition in the market as an example, Sassicaia and Ornellaia, that practically invented the category of DOC wines from Bulgaria. So that is one key selling point for you. Go out into the market, get placed next to it, because I believe that if you talk about a brand and you talk about Argentiera Bulgari Superiore, and you're on the shelf at $100 with 97 points from Parker or 95 points from Spectator or wherever the press comes from, and the next relevant answer to the same question from a consumer is, what do I get from this category? Is Sassicaia or Ornellaia? And they're 50% more expensive. For 97 points, it is my belief, and many of the consumers' belief, that they're willing to trade, right? If they've heard of Sassicaia and they want to try this because it's same points or slightly less, but a fraction of the cost, I think we're going to win. This is why we want to be next to them on the shelf. So I have a note that says the wines sell themselves, but I need to talk about the wines themselves, right? So this is Poggio a Genepi Rosso, Hill of Juniper. This is a delicious red wine. It's from the DOC of Bulgaria. By that I mean on the label you will see it says DOC. The difference between a DOC wine and an IGT wine is really important at this price point from a winery in Bulgaria. All of the grapes that go into this beautiful bottle of wine are estate grapes. You will also see our competitors or our complementary wineries from the category of the DOC with IGT designations on a similar quality level. It's really critical that on 65 hectares of land, even our entry-level wines all go into DOC at Poggio a Genepi Rosso. So the base grape here is Cabernet Sauvignon. The secondary varietal is Merlot. Then you have some Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc. Delicious bottle of wine, aged for 12 months, a little bit of oak, and then put in a bottle, brought to you for a delicious price, BTG, or stack it high and let it fly. So I'm holding this amazing bottle of Villa d'Onorantico. One, it's heavy. Number two, it is amazing. You think about the type of weight, not only in the bottle, but also on the wine, it over-delivers. You're talking about a retail bottle of wine in the mid-30s. It allows you to get on customers' lists from restaurants under $100 because the wholesale is going to be in that $24, $28 price point. You've got an excellent price-value ratio because when you get this on a table, the dark color in the glass makes people think of California, but you get it on the nose and it is definitively Italian. It is absolutely a Tuscan wine. This is a base grape of Cabernet Sauvignon, secondary varietal here, as opposed to Merlot like you would find in the Poggio or in the Bulgaria Superiore. The secondary varietal here is Cabernet Franc, then followed by Merlot and a little bit of Petit Verdot. Expect more bang for your buck, more punch, more extraction, more weight, more depth in this wine. It's killer. I really encourage you to get it out there. For the lineup of these three wines, you typically think about young vines into the Poggio Rosso, and then it's a competition to see what goes into either the Bulgari Superiore or Villa d'Onorantico. And for my money, this is the everyday wine. And then, of course, you step it up on lists to get to the Bulgari Superiore. So the last wine that we're going to talk about is, of course, the best wine. So this is the Bulgari Superiore from Tenuta Argentiera. It is a classic example of Cabernet, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc blended in. Of course, the heavier of those wines is Cabernet Sauvignon on this particular blend. It's a tremendous bottle of wine, aged for 14 to 16 months, depending on the vintage, aged, of course, in French oak. There's a combination of new and used. It's really not important. It's light on the new oak, heavier on the used, because you want the fruit to shine through, right? So this particular wine, selection of the oldest vineyards, and of course the best barrels in the room for them to put into, and of course made every year consistently. But this is, of course, one of the top wines from the region. Here, of course, 2016 vintage. We can talk about vintages. 15 was sort of the best of both worlds. I always talk about vintage as either sun or soil. In this example, I think it's a bit more of the soil-based vintage. By that, I mean you've got the complexity. You feel a bit more of the earth on this wine, but it is by no means lacking fruit. So really important here, you've got complexity, balance, weight, as opposed to a wine like the Villa d'Onorantico, which probably has a little more punch to it. Here you're looking for something a bit more complex, more elegant, more finesse-driven. So in summary, thanks for taking the tour with me. It's been a pleasure to walk you through virtually, of course. Tenuta Argentiera, it's to me one of the most exciting wineries that we have in the portfolio. And for sure, for you, it could be the silver bullet as you go out there and talk about what it means to represent the Volio portfolio, the type of wines that we have from Italy. And I think just in summary, you have to think about the fact that we are one of the most southern producers in the DOC of Bulgaria, the youngest of the top 5 producers in name recognition. We are the most competitive in price because, again, going back to it, we are the youngest of that top 5 group. So it's only just that we built the brand through you all out there on the street. And then, of course, the quality of the wine speaks for themselves. The best thing that you can do here is get these wines in front of customers, pop the bottle, and let them decide for themselves. Because if they're familiar with the category of Bulgari, it is really hard for someone to say these wines are not excellent for the money. So I encourage you to take them out, put them in your bag, and best of luck getting us BTGs and list placements, stacking it on the retail side, and having a great time laying the foundation for one of the top brands in all of Italy for sure, but one of the leaders in the international varietals from Bulgari. Thanks for coming along the ride, and keep drinking.